Marian Staș, Harvard Kennedy School graduate, expert in education. Welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm truly, truly honored.
We decided to have this conversation in English, although both of us are Romanian citizens and we speak Romanian, for the very simple reason that our topic today is education as a security, national security pillar, and we choose the example of the Nordic schools that actually teach English mandatory for their students in order to be able to adapt much more easily to the international world.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. It's a first for me as well. And I truly appreciate the fact that we will frame our conversation under the national security umbrella, because I have a strong reason to do that, and I'm looking forward to unfold it.
In Romania, this week we had protests. The educators of our country are upset on the reforms that are being taken. We will not debate if the reform is good or bad, right or wrong. The question is why education actually matters for a state, for its national security.
In my opinion, what happens now is without precedent. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's for the first time that things are truly, laid on the table as they are. The inconvenient truths are there. And this is obviously a reason for insatisfaction, for, turbulence and so forth and so on. Second thing, there are two distinct pieces of the story. Number one is managing the crisis. So we need to be able to, look good in front of international investors. And we are not talking only about education, but also about the magistrates, about the health system, about the public companies, owned by the states and so forth and so on. So if we look, there is a common denominator there. Second thing is about the transformation of the school system as such. And this brings me to the national security argument. Let me be very clear from the beginning why am I considering, and I put that in a book about 12 years ago. The book that I wrote was Education and National Security. Here's the argument, and I'm talking as a person who worked in this field for about 2-3 decades already. The main problem with our school system, and I mean here the K through 12, the pre-university school system here in the country, is that it is still entrenched in its old paradigm. I'm calling it the communist paradigm, and I'm not criticizing the ideology as such. But the main ingredient of the communist paradigm, which is totally counterproductive and it doesn't fit at all with our reality, is centralization. Ferocious, deep centralization. Now we are in 2025. Romania is a NATO member state, a EU member state, and it can be in need of anything else but centralization. So this clash between a model who is already entrenched in this old communist format and the realities and the needs of the country as such create that tension. And of course, as always with our dear political class, with hypocrisy and incompetence and short-term interests, everything was delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed until it exploded in our faces in general as a society, as we were witnessing since the installment of this new government.
This Cold War mentality, let's say, because there were a lot of countries that actually were part of the former USSR. Romania was just a communist country. This way of educating the society, everybody went to school, but then again, what did we learn to school back then? The rest of the countries of the former Soviet countries changed their curricula, and we are still in the same old type of teaching and behaving somehow. How does this influence the national security?
In the bad sense, in the wrong sense, because when I'm talking about centralization, I mean two important things. Number one, everybody was meant to learn the same thing, all the kids in the country, which is
mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. Second thing, when I'm talking about a value, the most important piece that was taught and inculcated and brainwashed during those times was obedience and compliance, as opposed to what we need now, which is open mind, critical thinking, subsidiarity, being able to explore alternatives and so forth and so on. So I was shocked to see that it took at least me 2.5 decades to start and begin, you know, molding and convincing the system that it can change, okay? And this is the most important piece that I would emphasize in our conversation. So the answer to your question is that not all the system, as we speak about it now, behaves in this way. As of 2021, there are a number of schools who were brave enough, courageous enough, with wonderful principals, leaders, and the teaching staffs, and the parents, and the kids, who dared change their curriculum, who dared change in Romania. And it happened for the first time, in, as I said, in 2021, when 5 public schools and 1 private school decided to do that. And the good news is that it paid off. So what I'm telling here is the following thing. Even though leadership and courage and vision is not uniformly distributed in the country, so we didn't come across like 10,000 schools, everybody wanted, all of them wanted to be, I want to do the change and so forth and so on. There were a number of people who actually were courageous enough to do that, and then year by year by year, the second year, the third, the fourth, and so forth, they multiplied, they became more and more. The good news is that 2 things happened at that point in time. There were schools that decided to do that, and second thing, the outcomes were very good, both in terms of, say, for example, percentage of kids that graduated from the 8th grade in one wonderful school in the countryside, 50 kilometers from here, from Bucharest. Last year, the kids from the 8th grade passed the end of the gymnasium, like 18% of them. But this year, the ones that went through the newly designed curriculum, they were 45%. So this speaks a lot about the fact that the key piece of the school transformation, which is the curriculum, the curricular architecture, paid off. So this encouraged more and more schools to apply, to the extent that the leadership of the Ministry of Education heard, understood, saw it, and now we are at the point where, as of this school year, the national program for systemic curricular piloting was set up with an alternative that is truly of 21st century.
And this change of curricula, how actually helps the kids? Will be more
wonderful.
Leaders, will be more prepared for specific jobs? What is this shift bringing?
Both of them. So on one hand, the most important thing is that we implement the major difference between the previous setting and where we are now. In other words, decentralization, subsidiarity in European, terms, bringing education and decision as close as possible to the school and to the kids. Actually, the main concept there is curriculum la decizia elevilor din oferta școlii. In other words, curriculum at the decision of the students from the school offering, which is unheard of, is without precedent. It's for the first time that actually the kids have the possibility to learn and to exercise making decisions, evaluating choices, and in a percentage, as compared always to the common knowledge, to the common body that everybody needs to go through, to choose and to learn and to study what they feel that it's best for them. So that's the major concept out there. The point here was, how did we get here? I think it's worth it, because as I found out, the whole system was ferociously, as I said, entrenched in resistance to change. Okay, so how do you go about that? And speaking of education and national security, I'll put it in the strategic key now. There were a number of pieces there that were available. To me, the dearest is the wonderful example of Nelson Mandela, who back in the early 90s, as he became president, he noticed obviously the tension between the values that apartheid still kept there in South Africa, and yet unborn new South Africa. And so what Mandela decided was the following thing. He issued a decree whereby both the national anthems, the old one and the new one, were presented at the same time, and also the national flags were also displayed at the same time. So there was a period of time where he decided that the old and the new should coexist to make room for the new and to, you know, fade away the old paradigm. That's exactly what happened now. We were smart enough to actually create these enclaves, which actually happened across the Prut in Chișinău 15 years ago. They invented a public school under the auspices of the Science Academy of Moldova, Liceul Academiei de Științe a Moldovei, the High School of Science Academy of Moldova, and it was the only one that had a different curricular approach. And then in 10 years, they reviewed, they decided that it worked, and then at this point in time, the high schools, you know, across the Prut, they have 4 or 5 choices that they can choose of. But there was a flagship there, and the name of that, you know, courageous leadership sort of case was this high school that I mentioned about.
We see that a national security threat in terms of education is the fact that many generations, not just the young generations, are taking their information from the internet. Smart is the new sexy, say some young people, but then again, we know for sure that if you don't have a basis of your education, you cannot decide what is good or bad from what you see on the internet. Is internet an education enough? How shall we try to bring back these people? Because the new thing now is the fact that if it's on the internet, then I should believe it.
The obvious answer is no. It's not enough. But on the other hand, I think it's important to blend the two. And this is my main argument in the project that we are talking about, in shifting the paradigm here and bringing choice as close as possible to the kids. I believe that in the 21st century, one, if not the most important skill that kids should, you know, practice and learn is to make choices, to evaluate options, to evaluate alternatives, to apply critical thinking, and then to make a choice which is informed and eventually, hopefully, does not wash the brain. So each and every one of them should be capable to understanding. I like internet. I'm watching all sorts of clips and so forth and so on. But from here to what happened and was documented by, for example, Ziarul de Gardă at Chișinău, when the whole mechanism there was put in place systematically and paid for by the Russians to actually influence the minds of the people before they influence elections.
You are
that's
talking
quite
about manipulation done with the help of internet.
Right, exactly. So, and where does it get? To the weak people. There was an interesting argument. I watched that interview and that documentary there, and there was an interesting argument that the most difficult to actually find followers was in Chișinău, where more educated population was there. So it wasn't that easy for them to get through and to convince them to do what they have to do. So my point is that it's desperate. It's like life and death, like national security, so that the most important pieces of this era, of these times that we live, in other words, evaluate options, be aware that what we see is not necessarily what we get always, and perception is one thing and the reality is the other thing, and also being able to, as I said, evaluate choices and make the informed decision, that's vital for this generation. And this is why the model, the framework, which actually is totally opposed to the old centralized communist paradigm, is to do two things. Number one, to balance healthy what is called true in common, in other words, the common body of knowledge that everyone should go through, and kids' decision, or the exercise to do that. Because in this framework that we are talking about, we made room between 40% and 60% of the time budget between the 9th grade and the 12th grade, 40% through 60% never happened, okay? For the kids to exercise and to practice their decision. Turn by turn by turn, time unit by time unit by time unit. Obviously, offering them the possibility, so as they approach to the graduation of the high school, in the 12th grade, 11th grade, so they have more choices, of course, because they will prepare each and every one for their own, tracks of life, walks of life.
If we look now in the current curricula, the kids are still learning maybe some topics that are not necessarily useful as a skill in the future, because now technology is the basis of everything.
Hopefully, yes.
Fingers crossed, yes.
Hopefully, yes, fingers crossed. And I am confident that this will happen for two good reasons. Number one, my bet is that there will be enough high schools interested in joining this national piloting program, okay? And the second thing is that the framework as such, the curricular framework, is very broad. So my bet is that in a year, so the program will start in 2026, 2027. The next year, well, the whole high schools, all the high schools will have different new curricula, okay? But I think that by that time, there will be a number of high schools that each and every one will have their own sort of design in this framework. Now we're in a different framework as compared to what all the parents say, oh my goodness, in my old times, in my good old times, this was the school what it is, and this should be, in my old times that was good, and now it should be as good for you now. Wrong, because the times have changed, everything has changed, and for example, at the sort of student, kids level, one thing which is different and is both annoying and rewarding and challenging from the educational standpoint. The time span sort of is narrowed like crazy. I mean, they only digest things in 30 seconds, 45 seconds. The moment that you expose them to 15, 20 minutes, oh my goodness, they start yawning, and you lost them. So there is another exercise there to focus, to learn them focus, because not all the things fit 30 seconds, okay? But on the other hand, there is a very important piece there on how to educate them to make sense of what they receive, to understand, to evaluate, and to take the right course of action, and hopefully not being brainwashed like it happened in October, November last year with elections in Romania, which was, it was like blowing in our faces like nothing before.
Well, because we do speak about education as a national security pillar, please do explain to our viewers why an educated population means also a more cohesive society. Because security and the society cohesion are connected, are dependable one on the other.
That's a great question. See, there was the Latin word there, dubito ergo cogito, cogito ergo sum. So being means first and foremost being educated, having read books, having had opinions, and having my own, perception on the reality, and being able to, on one hand, express myself, but on the other hand, understand, my interlocutor. So the moment that I don't have that I am not, educated enough, I'm not able to understand what is going on around me. There is a very serious pool of research when it comes to the culture of the societies by Geert Hofstede, who is a sociologist, and he devised like 6 indexes, to measure the societies. One of them is called the power distance index. Power distance index is a number between 0 and 100, which tells the following thing. The higher the number, the closer to 100, the more the society is prone to asking for a decision, to being approved, to asking for someone that should tell us what is good or what is bad, what is wrong. Why? Because we are afraid to make our own decisions, okay? So now, look at Finland with a 30-something power distance index, and look at Romania with a 90-something power distance index. So that's one thing that we really need to work with, because now we're in a sort of cognitive dissonance, if you want, existential dissonance, with respect to the way we are, like always, wanting someone to give us go-ahead so that we not be responsible for what we do. If it goes wrong, that guy who told us what to do, it's responsible, okay?
It's his fault.
Right. bears the responsibility. But on the other hand, the world that we live in now, EU, NATO and so forth, is by definition flat, is decentralized. So from this, clash, again comes tension, or come tensions, okay, that go exactly to this argument that there is a need of a special kind of education, national security, so that we be able to be prepared and work and function as well as possible, as effective as possible in this decentralized reality, which is very opposite to our inner sort of beliefs and convictions and prejudices, okay? We don't need no more to ask for someone's permission, but instead we have to learn and to be able to make our own decisions there. And this requires education, guess what? And also to respect institutions, because we need those as well. Marian Staș, thank you so much for this conversation, and let's just hope that the security of Romania will have a better education. Thank you.